Happy Monday, and thanks for joining our Power Up. We are so glad you are here today, and we see some of you are joining as teams, so we're happy to see that. This is such a timely and relevant topic as we think about sustainability, how to keep our residency programs thriving well beyond the life of grant funding. And of course, like all of you, we believe residency is one of the most effective ways to prepare our next wave of high-quality educators in California. Today we'll take a look together at how we can keep residency programs going strong for years to come. So once again, thank you for joining this Power Up. We're excited to get started. Yeah, so this Power Up is a joint effort between SRTAC, the statewide Residency Technical Assistance Center, and TRL, the Residency Lab. We have teamed up to share the latest ideas, tools, and approaches for sustaining residency programs across the state. So throughout this Power Up series, you'll hear practical strategies, connect with peers, and have the chance to start developing an action plan to keep your program strong and sustainable. So we'll take a quick moment to introduce ourselves. My name is Javier Baca, and I am the Southern Region Hub Lead for SRTAC. And I'll send it to Amy.
Hi, everyone. Amy Bennett. I work as a coordinator for SRTAC out of the Santa Clara County Office of Education, and I'll turn it over to Heather.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Heather Michelle, and I am the director of the Residency Lab. Super excited to be here with all of you and to collaborate with Javier and Amy.
Yeah, thank you, Amy and Heather. And so we have put all of your session resources, everything you'll need for today in one easy place. And so Heather just put that link in the chat. So I'll give you some time to open that up. Maybe it's in another tab, and I'll just walk you very quickly through what you have on that sheet. So on the resources page, it includes today's slides, a feedback form, which will give you time to complete before we wrap up today, some core documents that we'll reference throughout the series, resources specific to today's topic, links to both the SRTAC and Residency Lab websites, some upcoming events and registration links, a coaching request link to connect directly with our team. And I think finally, just at the bottom there, you'll see the CTC office hours link, which happens the second Wednesday of every month at 2 o'clock, and where you can stay up to date on the latest residency information from CTC. So you have everything right there to refer back to after today's session.
All right, everybody. We wanted to begin by grounding in the purpose behind this Power Up series. Earlier this year, the SRTAC and TRL teams got to review findings from the Teacher Residency Grant Program Survey, which was conducted by WestEd this past spring. And that survey reached 105 LEAs and achieved a 79% response rate, which provided valuable insights into the current state of residency programs across California. And several of the survey questions focused on program sustainability, which we know is a critical issue as remaining grant funds are winding down. And the results showed that most programs are either actively implementing or beginning to explore sustainable funding strategies. And these findings kind of guided us to make sustainability a central theme throughout this year's virtual offerings, especially in this Power Up series, where we'll dive deeper into some practical approaches for long-term program success. And this was another question from that same survey, which asked programs to identify which sustainability approaches they were currently exploring or implementing, such as LEA paid roles like paraeducator or substitute teacher positions, and the use of local funding sources, including LCFF funds. And we found that a significant number of programs are either planning to implement or actively exploring these strategies. And so as a result, this Power Up series will focus heavily on local funding opportunities and other practical approaches to sustaining residencies beyond the grant period. And then this slide shows kind of the overarching themes of each of the 4 Power Up sessions that we're going to be offering this year, kind of at a glance. Today, we'll start by grounding our work in the sustainability framework, kind of setting a shared foundation for what sustainability means in the context of educator residencies. And you'll learn some LCAP essentials from an expert, really breaking down how funding priorities and local goals can intersect. And then in November, we'll take a deep dive into LCAP implementation. We'll feature some program highlights from across the state that are showcasing how different LEAs are aligning their residency programs to local goals and funding streams. In January, we'll focus on leveraging paid LEA roles, really looking at sustainable staffing models and highlighting LEAs that are doing this work currently, either paraeducator or substitute teacher positions for their residents. And you'll get to hear from those field experts who are implementing. And then our final session for the year in February will explore creative and emerging funding approaches being used across the field. We'll collaborate to identify some practical strategies that you can adapt and apply. And so the overall goal of all of this is to leave you with a toolkit of sustainable funding options to support your program long term. And so we'll shift into today's focus. As I just mentioned, today's section is really designed to build a strong foundation for understanding and applying sustainability concepts in your residency work. By the end of today, we hope you'll understand the key components of the organizational sustainability for continuity framework that we'll be introducing in just a few minutes. This will help you see where your program fits, what levers you can use to sustain it over time. Second, as I mentioned, we'll take a closer look at the LCAP process, unpacking what it is, how it's developed, and the major components that kind of drive local decision-making and funding. And then finally, we will make it interactive. You'll get the opportunity to participate in a scavenger hunt using your own LCAP, exploring your district's goals, actions, and metrics. And again, the overarching theme for today is to help you see some clear connections between your residency program and your LEA's local priorities, and really connecting the dots to understand the sustainability framework and linking it to the LCAP and identifying where your program can be elevated and sustained through these structures. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Heather.
Thank you, Amy. Before we get into the objectives that Amy just unpacked, we want to just take a moment to visit our characteristics of effective teacher residency programs. If you have been in space with SRTAC or the Residency Lab, you have seen these before. This year, they were updated and revised, so this is a new version. They are linked to the resource sheet that was dropped earlier into the chat, so you can access them there. But we always want to take a moment just to make sure that we continue to revisit these and make sure that they're at the forefront. They're kind of our North Star as we're engaging in residency implementation. They serve as a common framework for all residency programs at various levels of implementation, and they really exemplify the scope and complexity and development of residency work. They center equity and justice and that key important piece of data. They form the basis of all support and assistance for residency programs, and they are also connected to the RFA through the CTC. In light of that, and in service of, Amy, if you could advance the slide, we have also created program folders. Every program has a program folder. This is also linked on the resource document that was put into the chat. If you haven't already, we're asking that you, at some point today, navigate to the linked program folder where you can find a copy of the key characteristics, a copy of your planning tool, and then just some notes and things that really support institutional sustainability, which we will be unpacking later on in today's session. And with that, we're going to move into our connector. Because residency work is very relationship driven, we also want to give you a chance to get into space and kind of build that community here. During our session, we have a this or that moment. I'm a fan of this or that, especially in fall, because it really kind of signifies a pivot from summer into our new season, the holidays, and just colder weather. And so we are going to drop a picture of this into the chat. Amy's going to put us into breakout rooms for about 3 to 5 minutes. You'll have a chance to respond. You don't need to respond to every single thing on this list, but maybe something in particular calls out to you, and you'll have an opportunity to talk about that with your colleagues for a few minutes before we come back and get into the work. We are going to move into and kind of get into the focus of today, and that is sustainability, residency program sustainability. And we kind of want to spend some time before we get into our LCAP expert and just the other conversations we're going to have today with some context and contextualizing our work. And so, about a year ago, the Residency Lab offered this framework as a way to think about residency sustainability writ large. And before we get into kind of the different ways we're thinking about it in this specific framework, I want to offer a few kind of perspective shifts and just kind of ways to think about this. And the first thing I want to offer to this space is really this idea of when we're thinking about residency sustainability, we're really thinking of entrepreneurship and thinking about creative solutions in terms of how we can sustain the residency program that you are currently implementing. And so we have to kind of think out the box and be creative. And that's part of the work that we're going to be doing together as we move through this power up. The other two mindsets I want to share with you is this difference between self-reliant and self-sufficient. I would say right now, residency programs are pretty self-sufficient. You know how to run, you have your funding, you've got some good things in place in terms of roles and responsibilities. And now we have to kind of move into this area and this kind of perspective that's more self-reliant. That means that you can rely on yourself to sustain your own residency program, both financially, operationally, in terms of engagement. And that's going to be a shift in the field that we're kind of encouraging you to move into. And the third point I want to make in terms of a mindset shift is this continuous process of improvement. And that kind of goes in line with what I just mentioned in terms of entrepreneurship. We're constantly thinking about how can we improve? What different ways can we look at some financial solutions? What are some things we can do differently in this moment so that we can meet the objectives we're aiming to meet in terms of residency implementation? And so kind of thinking about those ideas as I unpack kind of the three parts of this framework in more detail. And so there's three parts to it. There's institutional sustainability, okay? There's financial sustainability and engagement sustainability. And I'm going to unpack each one of these in more detail as we move through these next few minutes. And so institutional sustainability, this really speaks to the integration of concrete elements that support a proactive stance. Now, if you have been interacting with the lab and SRTAC for the last couple of years and even before that, you probably have some of these things already in place. That's the good news, right? We're talking about a mission statement, aspirational objectives, actionable strategic plan, well-defined roles and staffing. These are things that really institutionalize and make your residency program stable over the long term. A sustainable residency program focuses more on process than the destination. And so again, revisiting things if you need to revisit these things, but having these kind of things in place really sustain that residency program over time. Financial sustainability. This is the big one, right? This is what's really driving a focus in this area right now. It's important, but it's not the only thing. And again, this comes across this idea of self-reliant is different than self-sufficient. Understanding and moving into that self-reliance space. So knowing where your funding is coming from, you can be reliant on your own self to braid that funding and begin to draw on different funding sources, both inside and outside of your organization. Self-reliance means that the residency program knows what funds are available. A first step in this direction is really to determine the actual cost of the model your context supports. So we are now moving into the part of residency program development that's really going to ask ourselves, what are some things that are non-negotiable for us? What are some things that we want to make for sure and be critical components of our residency program? And then what are some things that we might have to move towards later on? And so again, thinking about those things as we're moving forward in terms of financial sustainability. And then the last one is engagement sustainability. And this is one that is oftentimes overlooked. And again, this is really critical right now. A sustainable residency program includes engaged and committed partners at all institutional levels. Okay, critical partners include the department chair, clinical practice coordinator, a collective bargaining unit, your human resource department, residency supervisors and mentors, university professors, district leadership. And so in really leaning into this engagement piece is we're trying to make residency work as visible to all of the leaders in our ecosystem so that when they're in a position to make a decision about our residency work, they have some concrete knowledge and a concrete experience that they can draw from in order to inform those decisions. Oftentimes what this looks like is inviting your leadership to those site visits, inviting them to the collaborative coordinating Zoom meetings that you are involved in, talk to them about the data, sharing the things that are happening, having them talk to the resident candidates themselves, right? So again, engaging all critical partners in this work so they have a concrete understanding of what residency work looks like. And kind of in light with that idea of engagement, I want to offer an additional piece to the engagement piece, right? The engagement sustainability piece. And that is this idea of a value proposition. Now, what is a value proposition? A value proposition is a concise statement of benefits or valuable outcomes of a product or service. So we are borrowing this idea of value proposition from the business world, but it can also be applied to advancing our work in the residency space. Value propositions for residency programs fall into the pillar of engagement sustainability and include three main elements. Can you advance, Amy? Oh, there we go. Thank you. Let's see, we have the first one, a plan for making the residency mission vision real and concrete to institutional partners. I just unpacked that through my engagement sustainability piece. An explanation of how a residency program might solve a partner's most urgent problem, right? So thinking about how you can position your residency program to really solve the problems of perhaps something that's going on in human resources, something that's going on in the IHE, a need that the district might have. So thinking about how the residency program can solve these different issues system-wide, okay? A rationale for how partners might benefit from a residency program. So thinking about how your human resources department might have a need for substitute teachers or matriculating paraprofessionals into those positions. How can we leverage the residency work to address these bigger issues and engage more people and kind of create that value proposition and engage more people in the successful implementation and well-funded residency program at your specific district?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Heather, for giving us an overview on the sustainability framework and the value propositions. We do want to invite some reflection on each of those sustainability frameworks. And so we are going to put you into some breakouts in just a moment to talk about institutional sustainability, financial sustainability, and engagement sustainability. And as Heather took us through each of those topics, perhaps you were thinking about your program and where you're at in each of those three sustainability frameworks. And we want to give you some time to discuss where are you? How's your program looking? What are the next steps as you think about each of those three types of sustainability? Amy, I think we've got some breakout rooms ready to go. And so we're going to send you there now for a few minutes to engage in that discussion and then bring you back for some whole group reflection.
Welcome back, everyone. I see some smiling faces, so it looks like it went well in your breakout rooms. Is there anything that anyone would like to share for their common good? Anything that came up in conversation that was like an aha moment or a little light bulb that went off that you think should be elevated so everyone can hear it?
Can I share my breakout, Heather?
Sure.
Oh, sorry. Someone else just, yeah. So I'll get the conversation going. I was with Brooke and Zoe from High Tech High Residency Program here in San Diego. And I just really appreciated how she brought up the engagement sustainability of bringing in leadership to get them to know your program, see the success, talk about ROI. She used the term ROI, Zoe said return on investment, so that leadership can see that this program works for our school and this is producing high quality teachers and that The best way to do that is to publicize it, invite leaders into the classroom, make presentations at board meetings or wherever you can to publicize your program and get that engagement sustainability going.
Wonderful point. Rate of return, right? That's great. What else?
If I could speak, I would just share what was generously shared. Bernie Levy was talking about Humboldt and 20 school districts. And so we were thinking about if you're getting ahead of the story, if you want to present the story and people are listening for their story to relate, he may have incredible variation on how this gets applied and how to really engage with that. That's looking for those stories. That's what our group was thinking about, the strength of storytelling, but how do you set it up? Maybe. I'm speaking for others. I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect, Lisa. I wholeheartedly agree. I think like creating a narrative around your residency program and the implementation there and giving the residents an opportunity to share their stories. And Bernie is absolutely right. That is part of it. Okay, I'm going to move into our next segment here and pass it on to Amy.
Hey, I want to just give a very quick high-level overview of an SRTAC white paper that was published this past spring. It is linked to the resources that we provided you. Many of you have probably seen this already, but for those who haven't, it's a great resource that you might want to explore a little bit more later. It's titled Leveraging LCAP Funding, Insights and Best Practices for Sustainable Residency Programs, and it really highlights how 3 school districts here in California, Bakersfield City School District, San Juan Unified School District, and Victor Elementary School District, are integrating their teacher residency programs directly into their LCAP actions to support with long-term sustainability. And it gives some practical insights and examples for programs that are exploring how to leverage local funding to sustain their residency beyond grant cycles. A lot of the recommendations align with some of the takeaways that were just shared around how are we using data to inform our leadership and ensuring that they're aware of the impacts of our program. So again, we just wanted everyone to have access to this as an additional resource to take back, to engage in those conversations with partners and leadership within your district. And we're very excited that here in a few minutes, we're going to take a bio break in just a moment. But when we return, we're going to be joined by someone who really lives and breathes this work around LCAP. We have an expert here, and she's really going to break down the process in more detail for us.
And so it is definitely my privilege to introduce Dr. Lisa Herzog. She is the Director of Curriculum and Instruction with the San Diego County Office of Education. In her role, Lisa supports district teams through coaching and by reviewing and approving their LCAP. We know that's the Locally Controlled Accountability Plan. We're going to hear more about that. So before joining SDCOE, she worked as a principal here in San Diego and served as the executive director of teacher effectiveness and teacher development for the New York City Department of Education. She's also worked as a national board certified bilingual and English immersion elementary teacher and taught at Teachers College Columbia University, where she also earned her educational doctoral degree. So you can definitely see and tell that Lisa brings deep experience from both classroom and system level perspectives. Today, we're excited to tap into her expertise to learn more about the LCAP and how it connects to sustaining residency programs. Welcome, Lisa, and thank you for being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I have to laugh that I just happen to be wearing the same jacket that I also took my photo in. Usually wear other jackets. So good to be with you all. And the goal of this session, and you can advance to the next slide, please. Thank you, is to give an overview of the local control and accountability plan. I'll be mindful about using acronyms. As people in education, you know we love our acronyms. So there are so many acronyms throughout, and we'll be talking about what those mean. And I believe it was Amy talking about before about how I live and breathe LCAP. I lived and breathed LCAP for the past 6 months. So we're actually a team of 5 people. And I joined the team in reading LCAP. So I'm relatively newer to the process, and my colleagues who are so steeped in it for years and years are actually at a conference today. So if there's questions I can't answer, I know Amy, Javier, and Heather will be jotting those down, and they'll be following up later. But I also bring an interesting insight because I have a lot of familiarity with accountability plans. And so being newer, and I was away from California from 2002 to 2022. And when I was digging into the LCAP and came back and found out what it looks like now, it's been interesting to make sense between what the intent is, how it gets experienced, and also what's the opportunities within the LCAP. So I bring that newer perspective as someone new to it. So we can go ahead to the next slide, please. And so we're going to be looking at what is the LCFF, so California School Funding System, which is called LCFF, and then its planning document, which is the LCAP, and then highlighting how you can get involved in the process. Next slide. So let's start with what is the local control funding formula. And that was part of the reorganization of California's funding systems for schools to simplify it back in 2013. So it went from a system where there were dozens of categorical grants to then ensuring that we were going to be having a more simplified funding and ensure that the districts with the higher needs are receiving the funds that they need. So the LCAP is about making sure that all students get some funds, but especially unduplicated students get additional funds. And who are unduplicated students? And I think it took me having a cheat sheet the past 6 months because that is not the language I would pick. But unduplicated students, we'll talk more about that later, are English learners, foster youth, and low-income students. So students who have been marginalized, historically and currently. How are we ensuring that schools with larger numbers of those students are receiving more funds, which is what equity is about. So every district is getting base funds and supplemental funds, but not every district gets the concentration funds. You have to have at least 55% of your students or more would be English learners and or foster youth and or low income. Next slide, please. And the principles that are behind our locally controlled funding across California is equity, honoring local control, and transparency. So ensuring that we are putting our funding more to the schools and the students and the districts who need it more, while really honoring the local context and understanding what the priorities are, and that the people closest to the students, the schools, and the district are, they know what their community wants and needs. And then also transparency. So the LCAP, the locally controlled accountability plan, is an annual document in 3-year cycles where districts then are saying, okay, this is our funding, these are our goals and our actions, and this is how we're matching our funding to our goals and our actions. Next slide, please. And every LCAP, by the way, is also available online. And that's part of California Education Code too. So after it goes through the approval process, they both need to upload it to the California dashboard, also to their district websites. And then we also post them for our San Diego County Office of Education. So what is then the LCAP? As I was mentioning, it's a 3-year plan. So we just entered the 2nd year of the plan when we were in a review cycle from about May until through the summer. And that's where, and every 3 years, districts kind of revamp their goals. But every year they need to say, okay, well, what's been our progress to the goals? Are those still our goals? Do we need to make adjustments based upon different factors that come up and reflect on the metrics that they picked? So they are charged with continuing to align it with the state goals like student achievement and school climate, and continually reflecting on the progress to date and what they've planned. Next slide, please. And this is just another, I think, like I've been talking about a lot of these principles. I think I think everyone here has both been involved in what's the intent of a policy, and sometimes the way that a policy gets experienced and lived gets a little bit messy. So really, I love this slide because I think it talks about, again, those goals are about that we are really focused on equitable outcomes for all students, and especially our students who've been marginalized and continue to be, that we are continually about improving and revisiting the actions that we're taking and ensuring that the money is tied to the most important actions that are going to impact all our students, but especially those high need students, and that we are also holding to the ed code. I think one thing I know later in this session today, you're going to have a chance to dig into one of your district's LCAPs. Having spent a lot of time the last 6 months reading them in depth, I remember the first time I picked up an LCAP, which was maybe honestly like a year ago, and it's just its own genre, and it can be a little bit cumbersome to read. And I remember even like reading through the first section, which is the family section, and then getting like a third way through, and I'm like, this is, and reading it again, I was like, oh, this is repeated all again, because they repeat parts at the beginning for the family section, and then it's actually the full LCAP. So I will invite, like, I'm glad that you're getting this framing before you dig into an LCAP, because I think seeing like what the purpose is, and there's also recognition across California that the form has actually become more and more cumbersome and long. And there's talk about, is there ever a possibility of streamlining it? For right now, I think it's powerful to look at what does it offer us in entry points, and having conversations with districts about the alignment of, is our money going to back up what we know is going to make difference for our students who need it most? But also holding on to the tension of, it is a form and a process that could become more expedited. And that's something that I know there's conversations across California about that. Next slide, please. And so this is a really helpful slide just to kind of let you know what's an overview of all the different sections. And so when you're looking at the sections later today, for one of them, know that there are these 5 sections of that you can be looking for in the document, and they get repeated in different places. But particularly for this audience, I would invite you to look at the engaging educational partners, the goals and the actions, and then the increased or improved services. And the engaging educational partners we're going to talk about in a minute really talks about how everyone on this call has the opportunity and should be included in part of the LCAP process every year, where districts need to be hearing from their educational partners and need to be showing how they are taking action based upon what educational partners say into the plan. The goals and the actions are going to be really helpful for you to say, you know, let's say it's a district you're working with, what are they identifying right now as their key goals? And then the actions match to those goals. And where are they putting their money currently? And then the increased or improved services is the specific section in the LCAP where districts need to show how is the money tied specifically to the students who need it most, those unduplicated students, the English learners, low income students, and also foster youth. Next slide, please. So every year, districts need to include in their LCAP, how did they engage with their educational partners? And so typically that includes parents, students, teachers, staff, advisor groups. There's certain ones that they have to do. It also can include community partners. So this is a great one for you as you're digging into an LCAP, looking at what's their process usually like. And a lot of times they'll have open forums, or you could contact the district and say, hey, I'm an educational partner. I'd like to get input. What are the opportunities for that? And it is required by law for all LCAPs. And so when we're going through, and I'm on the team that goes ahead, we do 2 rounds of feedback for the LCAPs. The first one is more formative feedback we give them based upon education code and thinking about how they're doing it. And then the second one is it approvable or not? And we go through the very technical of ed code to approve it. But we are constantly looking at what were the different opportunities they gave for all the different educational partners to be able to give feedback. And then how are they including that feedback in the plan that they have? Next slide, please. And then when we're also going through the LCAP, again, we are, and this is touching on things that I've said, looking at, in that last section, increased or improved services, and throughout the LCAP, we're checking how many of the services are explicitly and intentionally for English learners, foster youth, and low income. And it's not just, we're doing this for everyone and it's going to be good for English learners, but it's showing it's either increased services for the group of those high need students to the left, or it's improving it specifically and explicitly for them. And then there's also something called, and this gets more into the weeds and like higher level, it's like the 201 of LCAP, of the MPP formula, which is the minimum proportionality percentage. And this is when certain schools, because of their numbers of unduplicated pupils, gets additional funds. And then they also need to have like explicit, what's called equity multiplier goals for those schools and or groups of students. And you can go to the next slide. So the California dashboard, which is something I'm sure that you all dip into, is also a really important part of the LCAP and LCFF funds. So the California school dashboard is where the districts are really need to be showing their progress and then reflecting on what's in the California dashboard in their upcoming LCAP when they're looking at, well, have we been meeting our goals? What are our metrics showing in addition to other goals and metrics that they can use outside? A lot of districts, for example, will use internal surveys that they use beyond the Healthy Kids survey. And then the school dashboard, as I'm sure a lot of you know, is published annually. And then it's containing all the outcome in various state indicators that are aligned to the 8 state priorities that are identified in the locally controlled federal funding. And those 8 priorities are English language arts and mathematics, English learner progress, chronic absenteeism, suspension, graduation, and college career preparedness. There's a lot of mirroring between the California dashboard, what the key indicators are on that, and then what you have to also, in your LCAP, you have to address all the key indicators of that. Next slide, please. So what is your role in the LCAP? There's opportunities to join different advisory committees, like the English Learner Advisory Councils that most schools have, the School Site Council, asking to join those. Those get reflected on the educational partners and ways that they're incorporating feedback from those advisories into their LCAP. You can also attend public hearings. A lot of districts will hold community and or family, and I'm sure they would invite you to the family meetings as well, to get in educational engagement partners where they're inviting feedback for the LCAP. And then also a lot of districts will have surveys or input sessions too that they're using. So again, like whatever district you're working with, I would invite you to look at their current educational partners, see what are their ways that they're currently gathering educational partners, and then look for inroads into how you could join those in this coming school year. Because a lot of that educational partner input starts happening in the fall and then the winter. Next slide, please. So again, like the major parts is, since 2013, our locally controlled federal financial funding, and I'm so used to saying the acronym, I sometimes forget what they stand for. The LCFF funding is based upon student need, and our LCAP really is the local plan for equity and improvement. And that whole process really is about tapping into the engagement from the community, and the voice of everyone matters. So with that, I'll go ahead and invite questions. And again, if I don't know it, then I know the facilitators of this call will also acknowledge, write it down so we can follow up later.
We sure will. We sure will. Thank you, Lisa, for that overview. As Lisa said, we do want to invite some questions, some clarifying ideas or thoughts you have from Lisa's presentations. What questions do you have while we have Lisa? and you can unmute or put it in the chat.
I think I have a question. So if we're thinking about using LCAP dollars to fund a teacher residency program to fill shortage areas within our district, how would we even go about that conversation? Where would we start?
That is a great question. And I think that that could look a lot of different ways. I think first I would say it depends upon your relationship with the district. And having conversations with, I think you can bring those up in the educational partner meetings, is questioning the teacher residents or bringing the data. I know you all were talking about how are you telling the story of the data of teacher residency, and how might you also link it to the current goals that are already there, and then have those conversations. I also think it depends upon who your relationships are with the district and who you can start having conversations with. I will say, I'll be a little bit frank. Coming from New York, which was one of the highest funded in the nation, and then serving as a principal, I was shocked by how little funding there was in schools and education. So it's been a sticker shock being back in California too. So I think it's definitely possible. And I think it comes back to relationships and knowing that, also facing some of the loss of some federal funding and grants. It's going to be about the relationships, using the data to really tell strongly the story of teacher residency, how it's aligned to other goals. I know there's a lot of people saying that that money should go in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, thank you for that insight as we start thinking about how we might incorporate our residency into the LCAP. Are there some other questions? Yeah, Rebecca, you put one in the chat.
I just popped a question in the chat, sort of jumping off of Gina, your question about getting in there. I'm wondering if there are consequences for districts that don't meet their LCAP goals or incentives to meet their goals, and if there's opportunity and partnership there. So
that is a great question. So after we just entered as I mentioned earlier, year 2 of the cycle. And so year 1, you're setting your goals and your metrics. And then in year 2, we were reading the first year of goal analysis, which is looking at, are you meeting your goals? Are your metrics showing it? Which we know sometimes it might take longer. If you're putting in a new program or a new literacy instruction or something that you're using the LCFF funds for, you might not see that immediately, right? But one of the things we've talked about for an LCAP team is by next year, when they are 2 years into their goals, how do we start having those conversations with districts of, if your metrics aren't showing this, what are the adjustments that you need to make? And actually the LCAP asks for that. I think that could also be a interesting place to bring up in educational partner meetings. I will say the intent of the LCAP is that it's transparency. I will say, having read many policy documents over the years, many dense academic journals, I find LCAPs one of the driest documents. I don't know if I should say that. My other LCAP colleagues might feel differently, but I find it a very dry document. So to become a person who can actually go through that, pull out the key points from the LCAP, is a skill and could be really powerful to bring into an educational partner of like, hey, I see this goal. I see the metrics that were set for it, and it doesn't seem like the goals are having impact. What's the thinking about adjusting the goals and the actions based upon that data? And so a lot of it is the goal of transparency, and like as a central team, we also try, or a county team, we try to have those conversations with the districts and saying like, I wasn't part of it when they had to write their brand new goals, but when they're writing their new goals for that 3-year cycle, that's when we look across all 3 years and see, are you still doing the same thing that wasn't showing impact? That's not aligned to what the intent and what education code's asking for. I like what Connie just wrote. Could one of the questions be, which of your goals might be more likely met if you had resident teachers in your classrooms and on your campus? That's an interesting goal to bring up. And that's, I wonder if you could also have any case studies where you bring that data and you can share that, you know, district where they showed how which goals you're talking about and how having resident teachers impacted that goal for them. How can we bridge the teacher residency data to the district goals? I'm going to put that question back to all of you because I think you know your teacher residence data in a way that I don't, but I think that's an interesting conversation. I don't know if you want to have that now or later. Metrics from New York that you would suggest California could consider. That was interesting because I did teacher evaluation for 9 years. When teacher evaluation law changed in New York City from 2013. So when California did LCFF, teacher evaluation law changed it. And so that, like, I could do a whole talk on that. That was the first time we had student growth scores were connected to teacher evaluation. And I have a lot to say. I'm not sure. I think it still is. I went more from the teacher school level where the LCAP is at the district level. So that's an interesting question, Lisa. I think I'll be thinking about that one, and I don't have thoughts right now, but I'll be noodling on that after this call.
Lisa, I have a question. Could you speak a little bit about how the LCAP is approved, like that specific process? Like when is it, you said it's not a 3-year process, but when is it, like how long does it take before the next one is the confirmed one and the next one is the one that people are operating off of? Like what's the time frame between the old one and the new one in terms of like actionable steps? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So they have, they're now I'm doing the math in my head, in 2 more years. So in this spring, we'll start getting input on their 3rd year of the cycle.
Okay.
And it has to be approved over the summer. And they'll be launching, and in that will already start kind of like planting the seeds. What are you thinking about when you have to rewrite your new LCAP? That will be in 2 years.
Okay.
So there are ways we usually advise for different reasons to not amend goals, but sometimes there's reasons for people to add actions. So you might see examples in the goal analysis section for the district LCAP you're looking at, where they either decided to stop or pause, not usually into year 1, because it's only been 1 year to see if it's having impact or not. But I'm sure some of you will see examples of where a district has chosen to add actions based upon either like community feedback or, you know, different reasons.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Heather?
Yes, I was just trying to, like, for the community that's here, like trying to position them in terms of the time frame, like how long does it take? It sounds like it's a summer thing that happens, but when can they, when could they be strategic in terms of informing what those new actions are going to be, is what I was thinking, like how, like in terms of the process.
We encourage districts to start thinking about engaging their educational partners in the late fall and the winter.
Okay.
So I would say being on the lookout now, go into your LCAP, see when they did community engagement, because we usually to ask them to put in the dates when they did it. It'll give you a time frame for when the district and both how and when they engaged their community members, to then for you all to be able to ask, because there should be a lag between getting the input from your educational partners taking all that data back in, and then how you are incorporating it into the LCAP.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, great question in the
Again,
chat.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Lisa. Oh, yeah. I don't know if you
We
were at that,
approve
but
it.
Rebecca asked, like, who is the LCAP
Oh.
approved by? If you could.
The county office. So we both have, it's been interesting. Like I wore the policy hat in New York, and now I wear the policy hat a little bit here with the LCAPs. So and most county offices do it in this way. Not all, it's not required, but we do a first initial draft review where we both give them feedback, like suggestions that we make. So how are you making this more readable and really transparent and thinking about equity for your community? Then once July 1st hits and they need to like bring it to their board, they need it to have public comment on it. There's all these rules based upon California Ed Code for getting the LCAP approved. So we try to give an input on that process from the county office, and we calibrate with one another at the county office. And, we have financial partners involved in that. And we have multiple members of our LCAP team in on those initial draft review conversations with the district offices. Then we move after July 1st into the approval window. And then we have this kind of like checklist that we have to go through that isn't as much what's a best practice. It just goes into, does this meet the minimum requirement to be approved according to the Ed Code? And so sometimes there are levels of people have to revise after that, but our goal is that, and we tell this to our district partners, is our goal is to be so descriptive with you in the initial draft review that we only have to go through, once you turn it in for approval, we're able to approve it. But there's the minimum that we have to ensure that they've hit on for every, that gets very technical, but there's that minimum they need to meet.
Are there any other questions for Lisa? We are going to invite some reflection in just a moment. What was your takeaway or aha moment? But before that, we still have Lisa. Any other questions or things that you want to ask based on Lisa's tons of information and excellent information that she gave us?
I have one more question. I'm wondering, is the district's success on its different LCAP goals made public? Or is that something that, like that progress and that analysis piece throughout, is that private or public?
That is both in every year. They have to report on the metrics. So they set at the beginning of the 3 years, what are the metrics they're going to track each year? So you can go into their into their LCAP and look at what's that metric reported on. I would say, again, not the most user-friendly of documents. I would probably jump for each one to the goal analysis section. For each goal has a goal analysis section, and that's where they're supposed to have reflected on where did we maybe not make progress and what adjustments are we making. But you can also read across each of the metric rows and see, again, the education code doesn't put a lot of things as like right or wrong because of that individual local context. So you might even see a lot of variability across LCAPs. And even though we make recommendations for for it to be readable, at the end of the day, that a lot of times is not an approvability issue. But I would say, yeah, go first to the goal analysis section and then also look at the metric section. And that's where it's supposed to be public accountability about, are you making progress towards the goals and metrics you've set? Great question, Rebecca.
Yeah, lots of great questions, and thank you for keeping the conversation going, group. Are there any other questions for Lisa?
Lisa, I just threw a quick question in the chat. So the current 3-year cycle, Did it start, was it 23, 24 or 24, 25 that started
It started 23, 24.
So then 26, 27 will be the last year of the 3
20
years and then a new one.
No, 26, 27. So let's see. It's always like, I get confused because the dashboard, I was just 24, 25. Next year will be 25, 26. The 26, 27 will be the new 3-year cycle.
Got it.
So the current cycle, it's going to be through this next year, 25, 26.
So this is the last year of our
Oh,
current
wait,
cycle.
I'm so sorry, Amy. Okay. So this next year, 2025, 26 is going to be the 3rd year. 2026, 2027 will be the new cycle.
Got it.
And
Thank
Lisa,
you.
does that mean that LCAPs, the new 3-year LCAP will begin being written now so that it
No.
will be implemented for 26, 27 or 26, 27, the new LCAP will be written, which is a good time for us to elevate residency as they're writing their next 3-year program?
So Tina, if I may talk this out just to make sure that I don't get it wrong. So now this school year, they are going to be thinking about, so it's next school year, you should be talking with them for the new launching. In 2 springs, they will be submitting a draft for the new LCAP cycle. So in the spring of so 26, 27 school year, the 2026, 27 school year is when they'll be writing it. So the summer of 2027. Thank you. I wish I'd had these dates anticipated and written out.
This is great. So I think what I'm hearing is at this point, what we should as programs be thinking about is gathering our data, creating our story, our speech, our elevator speech on why residency programs, connecting it to student learning, student impact, doing all that legwork now so that we're ready and starting the conversations within the next year to get into that next cycle.
Yeah. And I think to have questions now about where might teacher residency fit in the existing, I'll be transparent. A lot of districts, they're not rehauling fully all their goals between the 3-year cycles. A lot of them stay the same. But there's the opportunity to look at, and it might not be a full goal about teacher residency. It might be an action within a goal is likely where it is. So I think Rebecca, as they're closing out the 3-year cycle, there's not a big lull. You know, like, again, like best practices, we're inviting districts now to already be thinking about their LCAP. The LCAP team, like there are different community practices meeting for people 6 times over the year in San Diego County, where they come and they're thinking about the different sections of it. So in just like this next month, there's going to be a section on engaging educational partners. How are you doing that, right? Our goal and hope as a county office is that we're creating space to not just wait until the LCAP is due to be writing it, but that it's an in-process thing. But we also know there's a lot of things going on for districts that compete with priorities. So understanding, especially I'll find a lot of times we find in like small districts where they're having to wear so many hats, that people are passionate and care about the LCAP, but I think a lot of times a lot more of that work happens in focus and attention happens in the spring, but there should be opportunities and ways that they're thinking about it throughout. A lot of the data and metrics don't release until the spring. And there's ways also on the dashboard, you're a year behind, right? So in the LCAPs we're reading over the summer, they were reflecting from the data from the prior school year. We won't, the dashboard, results are already released for schools and districts. They're not reflecting on those results in the LCAP until the spring. But a lot of the surveys, a lot of local data, they are having to wait into the spring and even the end of the school year to be able to include it in the LCAP. So it is a bit of it's an interesting process where I think the intent is really good. And there's ways it could be improved.
Well, great. Lisa, we so appreciate you and your time. We know that you left another meeting to be with us here today, so thank you, thank you. We stole you from another meeting. I appreciated how earlier you said the LCAP document is its own genre. It definitely is. You have to learn to speak LCAP. So thank you for leading us there and getting us closer to be able to speak LCAP. It was just a great overview and valuable insight into the LCAP process, and we thank you so much. And maybe we might be seeing you again or your colleagues in our future meetings. That was
I'm going to tag my colleagues who live and breathe this and I think could answer your questions, with all their years of experience. So, but
well,
thank you for having me and appreciate all the work that you're doing for teacher residencies. I know the research and having worked with teacher residencies are so powerful. So glad to be with you all today.
Thank you again, Lisa. Okay, and so with that, we do want to invite everyone to some reflection. And so we'll invite you to put this in the chat. So what stood out to you from Lisa's presentation on the LCAP? Maybe something new clicked, or maybe it reinforced what you already know. So what was your takeaway or aha moment from Lisa's presentation? We'll invite everybody to put that in the chat. Yeah, some great reflections in the chat. These are cool to read. I like, Rebecca, how you kicked it off with, I like the word clutch. The LCAP timeline was clutch. So we start understanding the process and the timeline and when to engage. And then Connie and some others. Yes, that was an aha moment that we're probably not going to change a whole goal in the LCAP, but perhaps residency will be embedded in one of the actions. So I thought that was a cool aha as well. Yep, and then we're just thinking about the conversations that we need to have to get started, to engage certain educational partners. I saw in the chat, we also are thinking about what data do we need to collect already and to show the impact. Yes, and just Lisa, I think you rounded it out there with the reflections, like thinking about our mindset and starting to plan and being proactive with thinking about the LCAP and how to incorporate our successful residency program. So thank you all for those reflections. I think I'm going to turn it over to Heather now, as you'll have an opportunity to get into your actual LCAP before our meeting is over today.
Okay, thank you, Javier. So we are moving into kind of an exploration time. We've just came out of some really great information that Lisa was able to provide about the LCAP, and we want to give you the opportunity today to look at your own LCAP and move through a scavenger hunt that we have created in service of some of the major points that Lisa just brought up. And so please take the next couple minutes to locate your own LCAP. Again, Lisa said that it should be on your district website. Also, county office website should have it. So take a few minutes to find your actual document. And then we're going to put you into breakout rooms, and you're going to answer the questions of this LCAP scavenger hunt. And this LCAP scavenger hunt has also been linked to the resource guide that was dropped into the chat earlier this morning, and we can drop it again. So you're going to want to have two things as you move into this breakout session. One, your scavenger hunt, and two, a copy of your current LCAP document that is associated with your LEA. And we can give you a few minutes to do that. And then we're going to move into collaborative breakout rooms of about 3 people. And you can look through your LCAP with and in collaboration with the other people in your breakout, and just get to know that document more in a more concrete way. Oh, Rebecca, definitely not an easy to read document, but lots of juicy data in there. Yes. Yes. I did find it to be well organized though. It's a template, so it's easy to search. That was the one thing that made it a little bit more easier to digest. What else? You can unmute or you can drop it in the chat. One thing that we did talk about in our group was the piece. We were all looking at one example and it outlined all of the engagement engagement parties. And so we began a conversation about how to be strategic around kind of targeting those different engagement, like the groups and committees and councils that the LCAP is drawing from in order to inform what goes in the LCAP was a long list of people. And so kind of honing in on and targeting which ones you want to kind of bring in as partners and inform them specifically about the residency work that you're doing. The parents were named as, a group that is probably the most influential at the district level. And so getting them on your side in terms of, staffing schools, getting teachers in front of their students that are the most highly qualified, that reflect the community that they come from. Parents can really be a force to be reckoned with when they get behind a specific initiative. And so thinking about that and being strategic about that. Also, the union representation was something else that came up as really critical. Because when we staff schools with committed, highly trained teachers, then we kind of reinforce and strengthen the whole ecosystem. And so thinking about those talking points and really being strategic about who we're targeting, that will later inform the LCAP goals and be a part of that process. Okay, let's see. Need to review and dig into the LCAP data more and thoroughly. Yes, absolutely. Brooke says the scavenger hunt template is so helpful. I also enjoyed that, Brooke. I know I was there helping to create it, but when I was actually doing it, I was like, these are the right questions. So that was good. Anything else? So we're hoping that you got to at least the first part of it. I know in our group, I think we got to three or four questions, but this is a starting point. Oh yes, let's see. What does Gina Perry say? Gina Perry says, if you haven't sat in an LCAP meeting for the community, I recommend you do that because they are very informative. Yes, absolutely. I think Lisa kind of reaffirmed that too. Get in space with the different people that are making the decisions early on so you kind of can understand the process and just what's talked about. Great advice. Okay, so we are going to end our session today with a touch point again with our planning tool and those 10 critical characteristics. You can access your planning tool in your program folder, which is linked on the resource guide that was dropped into the chat. When you open your planning tool, the kind of update you want to make is on, oh, thank you, Amy, is on characteristic number 3, operational sustainability. And you're really going to be focusing on C, D, and E. And thank you. And so thinking about how you can update your planning tool to reflect the work that you've done today. Again, we want to really encourage that you interact with this document because this document was created with the idea that it supports that piece of institutional sustainability. Creating documents and artifacts that support the sustainability of the work that you're doing. Oftentimes we have changes in leadership, but when we create and support these documents, they become those things that can be referred to past your tenure in supporting residency work. And so taking the time to fill this out on a consistent basis. And so today, because we're focusing on sustainability, it really is in line with that third characteristic, operational sustainability, and that C, D, and E indicator, selecting where you are and just adding some notes onto that document will go a long way. Hold on, Jessica, let me see your question. What is the name of the document on the resource link? I can't seem to find it. It is going to be your program folder. So in core resources, there are some linked folders there, Northern Region, Capital Region, Bay Area Region. And if you click on those links, you should have a folder, a program folder. Thank you, Jessica. Perfect. That has all the resources. And again, these program folders really are a structure, again, to support that institutional sustainability. So all the documents are in one place. Anybody that supports the residency program can access them. SRTAC can access them. The lab can access them in support of supporting you in your work. And so just really encourage you to follow up with that. And Amy, I think I'm going to pass it back to you.
Yes, we just wanted to put a reminder here as well about the residency program coaching request. You'll notice that in some of the drop downs on the planning tool, there might be a section that you need some coaching support with. And that's what our SRTAC and TRL coach team is here for. So we linked this to the resources as well. You can scan the QR code, but we just wanted to put that reminder here that the support is entirely complimentary, and we hope that you'll take advantage of it. And then we have just a few more reminders to go over before we wrap up today's session. We'd really appreciate your feedback as it helps us continue to improve and tailor these Power Up sessions to meet your needs. So if you could take a few minutes to please complete the feedback form. It is also linked to that resources page, or you can scan the QR code here. As your input really helps us understand what's working well, what additional support or topics that you'd like to see in future sessions, and we'll really use your feedback to help shape that content. So as you're filling that out, I'll go over a couple more key reminders before we wrap up today's session. And the first one is we just want to remind you, as we mentioned at the onset in our series at a glance, that our next session is scheduled for November 17th. And during that time, we'll be taking a deeper dive into LCAP implementation and featuring some program spotlights from across the state that are really showcasing how different LEAs are incorporating their residency program into their LCAP goals and actions. So today was just the starting point. Next time, you'll get to see how this is being done. And just so you know, you will be automatically registered for the remaining 3 sessions. Those calendar invites will be coming to you this week. So when you see them populate on your calendar, that is why. And if you have any other colleagues from your organization that you want to invite to our upcoming sessions, please direct them to the SRTAC website. That's where you can register for all of our virtual offerings that we have planned for this year. And then this is also just another reminder that registration is now open for our spring site learning tours. Those are coming up on Monday, February 2nd, and that event is entirely free for the field this year. We're hosting at 4 different locations that you have to choose from. So Hemet Unified School District, Humboldt County Office of Education, Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, as well as Lindsay Unified School District. And each site will offer a unique opportunity to see residency programs in action and learn directly from your peer programs in the field. So if you haven't signed up already, if you visit the SRTAC website, under the events tab, you will see that linked there for you to register. And in closing, we just want to thank you so much for spending a little bit of your morning with us today. We appreciate your time, your engagement in the learning. And yes, we look forward to seeing your feedback come through so that we can make sure that our future sessions are hitting on your needs around sustainability. But just thank you again, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your time.